My name is Rebekah Windschitl, and I am a youth and family therapist with Youth Service Bureau. I really want to thank your school for the opportunity to partner with us so we can share information about stress and anxiety and ways to manage it. If you have any questions at the end of this presentation, please feel free to contact us at ysb.net. So today I'm going to be focusing on stress and anxiety. And so the first part of that is, how do you tell the difference between stress and anxiety? Stress is something we know that's worrying us. It's related to things that are happening in our environment. So basically, it's our internal reaction to something that's happening out here. So that's what stress is. Now, different symptoms of stress: troubles concentrating, headaches, stomach aches, irritability, trouble sleeping, tense muscles, troubles relaxing, fatigue, maybe fidgeting or shaking a little bit, trembling, and sweaty palms. Those are the ways that we feel when we're under stress. Now, when it comes to anxiety, anxiety is the worry, fear, memory, or anticipation of something that hasn't happened yet. And that is related to our thoughts. So stress is something we know is worrying us. It's out here and we're having an internal reaction. Anxiety is we're having an internal reaction to something that's going on in our thoughts. So what does anxiety feel like? Troubles concentrating, headaches, stomach aches, irritability, trouble sleeping. So you see, the symptoms of anxiety and stress are the same. And that's one of the reasons why it's so difficult to tell them apart, is because they feel very much the same, even though they are different. So is all anxiety bad? No. A certain amount of anxiety is normal, it's healthy, and it's expected. Not all anxiety is considered what we call clinical anxiety. So if you look at my wonderful little graph here, this is all about anxiety and how well we do at things. So if we don't have any anxiety at all, if we're at the bottom here, if we don't have any anxiety at all, then we really don't want to do things. If you're not worried about the test and your grade, are you going to study? You know, so if you don't have any anxiety at all, then you really don't want to do things or go places or anything like that. But also, if you look on the other end of the spectrum, that if your anxiety is really, really high, then you can't function at all in general anyways. So what we want is we want a middle ground. We want a moderate level of anxiety in order to be able to help us perform well. So what does this feel like? This feels like when you're in sports, you're on the game, okay? You're in the zone. When you're taking a test, it means you're on it. You've got this, that feeling of confidence, like I'm in it, I've got it. That's that feeling. It's a feeling of confidence, but it's a feeling of focus and anxiety, and it's a good amount. So anxiety can be difficult to detect in some people. Some people kind of have this anxious personality, okay? So it's perfectionism, having really high expectations. They might be oversensitive to criticism or rejection, have a strong need to control things or people, difficulty relaxing, tendency to please other people, difficulty being assertive, worry a lot, and all or nothing thinking. All or nothing thinking is when it's this way or it's that way, and there is no in between. Okay? When you see kids in school who are anxious, usually they're well behaved, they're pretty sensitive, they are perfectionistic, they're usually highly motivated, very high achieving, usually intelligent, very self-conscious, and known as our people pleasers. So this is like the stereotypical anxiety personality and anxiety we see in kids in schools. However, there are some outliers, sometimes, but not always. There also might be what we call somatic complaints. These are the body aches, the stomach aches, the headaches, those kinds of things. Also, some people, when they deal with anxiety, they actually end up acting out and have behavior problems. When we see kids acting out in school, the two things that I think of is, are they dealing with anxiety or depression? Because that's one of the ways that it shows up. Having attention problems is another way of showing anxiety. And some people are so anxious that they have to socially isolate themselves. So let's look at the brain. What is going on in the brain when you have anxiety? So if we look at the emotion center of our brain, our amygdala, this gloopy green looking thing right here, this is our amygdala. This is the emotion center of our brain. This is where our fight or flight is. There's actually 4: fight, flight, freeze, and faint. Those are 4 things that your brain will automatically do in response to a threat. And so when your amygdala is going, your fight or flight is going, the emotions are really intense. There's another important part of the brain, and that's over here by your olfactory bulb. This is your prefrontal cortex. This is the logic, decision-making, impulse control, emotion control part of your brain. This part of your brain is not fully developed until you're 25 years old. 25, that's when your brain is finally developed, when you're 25 years old. So when we're dealing with kids who struggle with, anxiety and they struggle with emotions, that's the part of the brain that deals with regulating those emotions. It's also another reason why kids really struggle to think before they act, is because that part of their brain is still developing. So the thing is about this is when your amygdala is going, when you're anxious, your prefrontal cortex starts to go offline. It starts to not work so well. This is one of the reasons why when we are feeling a lot of heavy emotions, we don't always make the best decisions. It's because our thinking and logic part of our brain starts to go offline. So when our anxiety is really, really high, it's hard to think. So that's what's going on in the brain. Another way to think about it is having more of an emotion part of your mind and having a logical part of your mind. And your goal is to find a good balance in between them, more of a wise mind space. And so you've got your emotion part of your brain that when you've got too much of your emotion, your logical mind doesn't work very well. So in explaining how anxiety really works, other than the physical part of the brain, we call them the ABCs. So this is the activating event. This is the triggering situation of what happened. Okay, that's usually followed by an automatic belief. Some people call these the automatic negative thoughts or the ants. These are automatic things that come into our heads. There are a lot of times they're interpretations, assumptions, judgments about that triggering event. And then you have the consequence, which is the response or the result of the whole situation. So given an example, let's say the activating event is you are waiting at a movie theater for a friend. 5 minutes to show, they're not there. You're texting them, they're not getting back to you. Show is starting, they're still not getting back to you. So what belief comes into your head? Maybe it's they blew me off. Okay, so if that's your automatic belief, if you automatically assume that they're not there at the movie theater because they blew you off, a lot of times your consequence, your result might be you get really mad, maybe you're starting to rant, maybe you really yell at that friend the next time you see them, maybe you give them the silent treatment, you might lose that friend totally. Another possible belief that might come into your head, is if, maybe something bad happened. Maybe something bad. Maybe they got into a car accident. Oh my goodness, they're not getting back to me. Their cell phone isn't working. They got into a car accident. I have to contact all these people in order for them to be able to figure out where this person is. And you start panicking. Okay. So that's that consequence of that belief. And then there's maybe the belief of something that, hey, maybe something came up. Maybe their phone died. Maybe something came up and their phone died and they can't get back to me. I'm going to go to see the show anyways. I'll check in with them later to see what happened. Okay, and that's more of a calm result. So depending on that automatic thought, depending on that belief, that's going to lead to whatever consequence or result happens in the situation. And so when we're looking at anxiety, one of the big things that we want to do is become more aware of what our automatic thoughts are, be more aware of some of those beliefs. And if they're beliefs that are not helpful or they're ones that make us feel bad about ourselves, then we work on challenging those beliefs. And that in turn changes that consequence or those results. So you're anxious or stressed out. Things are happening. Now what? So this is where we talk about coping skills. So when we're talking about unhealthy coping skills, smoking, drinking, doing drugs. A lot of times smoking, drinking, doing drugs can make anxiety worse. Too much screen time, violence towards other people or things, taking it out on other people, binging on junk food and comfort food. Sleep can be considered an unhealthy coping skill. And that's because a lot of times when people want to use sleep as a coping skill, they go and take a nap. Now this nap is about 1 to 2 hours long. If you're going to use sleep as a coping skill, a 1 to 2 hour nap to deal with problem is more of an avoidant thing rather than an actual coping skill. Procrastinating is unhealthy. Other avoidant behaviors, withdrawing from family or friends, skipping school, also unhealthy ways of coping. Drinking caffeine, that can be something that's an unhealthy coping skill when it comes to anxiety because caffeine mimics the physical sensations of anxiety, the shakes, the heart rate increasing, all those kinds of things. It mimics that. And so if you're already anxious and then you drink caffeine and that increases those physical sensations, it's likely to make you feel even more anxious. And also feeling anxious and just not doing anything about it at all, that's also not very healthy. Now, if you look at healthy coping skills, we talk about deep breathing. Now, this isn't just taking a deep breath like that. No, this is deep breathing. This is low and slow. This is sitting up straight. This is putting your hands either on your rib cage or on your belly, keeping your shoulders away from your ears, and taking a slow, deep breath, expanding your belly, expanding your diaphragm, expanding your rib cage. Okay, so it's inhale slow, low and slow, pause, exhale, and exhale until it's all the way out. So in order to help make sure you exhale until it's all the way out, what can be helpful is making a tss sound. So when you breathe in, until you can't anymore, and then you know that all the air is out. Okay, and so when we're talking about deep breathing, we do this not just once, twice, 3, 10 times. We do this for a while, and it's focusing on the breath. You focus on what it feels like for the breath to come in your nose, fill up your lungs and fill up your belly, pause, and then exhale. What do those physical sensations feel like? Okay, so that's different breathing. When I talk about counting breaths, I talk about you want to inhale a certain number, pause, and then exhale longer. So some people who struggle with anxiety struggle with things like panic attacks when they start to hyperventilate. So when you're doing that, what you want to make sure you do is you inhale, let's say a count of 4 or 5. We're going to talk about it ticks to a clock. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, pause. And then you breathe out, and you breathe out as long as you possibly can, doing that. And the reason this is really important, if you're having trouble breathing, counting your breaths and doing it this way is really important because what's happening with hyperventilation is you can't get more in because you didn't get all the air out in the first place. So because you didn't get all the air out in the first place, you can't get more air in. So it's really important when you're starting to struggle breathing, maybe your breathing's just off a little bit between that or the full hyperventilation. You really want to breathe in for a short amount of time and exhale as long as you can. Make sure you pause in between. Another healthy coping skill is music. Now, music is a special one because when we talk about emotions in general, a lot of times when we're angry, we listen to angry music. When we're sad, we listen to sad music. Now, if you're feeling anxious and you're feeling sad or you're feeling angry and you want to listen to a couple of sad songs, go for it. But only do that for a couple of songs, maybe 2 songs. Then what you need to do is help yourself get out of it, because if you stay listening to that music, you're going to get stuck in it. And we want to help you cope with it and get out of it. And so the goal with music is to listen to music that is opposite of how you feel. So if you're mad or you're sad, it's listening to some more upbeat music. If you're really, really anxious, maybe you need to listen to some calming music, some ambient music. Moderate exercise is another one. And progressive muscle relaxation. This is slowly squeezing your muscles, holding them tight, taking a deep breath, and letting them go. And you do that with different parts of your body. There's a lot of really good scripts online on YouTube that can walk you through a guided progressive muscle relaxation that are really helpful. Other healthy coping skills, talking to someone. If you can't talk to someone, then do some journaling. You know, arts, crafts, building things, reading or writing a story, doing Sudokus or crossword puzzles, creating a gratitude list, things that you're thankful for, organizing and prioritizing things. Because we think about it, when we're coping with emotions, how many start to clean? Because I know I do. When I'm dealing with my emotions, one of the things I do is I start to clean. That's a natural reaction for some people, and it's a healthy coping skill. Another resource that you have available is what's called Change to Chill. This is a free online resource that's dedicated and geared just towards teens. And basically, it's a bunch of coping skills, and it teaches you how to use them. They've got little videos and everything like that. It teaches you everything you need to know. So here is the question of, is it a coping skill or is it avoidance? A coping skill is when you experience a problem, you leave the situation, you calm down, and you return to solve the problem. Avoidance is experiencing a problem, leaving the situation to calm down, and not returning to resolve the problem. Okay, so this is where that whole, hour 1 to 2 hour long nap thing comes into play. You're more avoiding than you are actually calming and coping. So some coping skill tips, right? You want to use these coping skills when you're getting too anxious. Okay, when you're starting to feel the anxiety, there's a certain amount of anxiety. Remember, that's normal and that's okay. But if it's starting to get a little too intense and you're still in control, that's when you want to start using coping skills. When you're using coping skills, you want to use them for at least 10 minutes. Yes, 10 minutes. You want to be breathing and you want, yes, 10 minutes of breathing. I'm absolutely serious on that one. It's because what you want to do is you need to change what's going on in your brain. Remember, your prefrontal cortex is offline and your amygdala is going. Your brain needs to start reversing that. It needs help and it needs time to do that. Also, another coping skill tip is that when you're using the coping skill, do not think about the problem that you're dealing with. You're not thinking about the problem you're dealing with. You're thinking about the coping skill that you're using, or you're thinking about something else that's more pleasant. Now, this is where I like to separate out calming skills versus rational coping skills. So if you look at the blue, those are calming coping skills. So these are ones that are getting your body under a little bit more control. You're taking you from a heightened state and bringing you down. Okay? So when you're anxious and you want to work on calming, these are great skills to use. However, if you notice that you're struggling by being stuck on thinking about what the problem is, if you cannot get your thoughts off of things that are making you anxious, then you want to do more of what's in the green, and these are more rational skills. So one of the ways to help calm you down is to really work on bringing that prefrontal cortex online, doing something that's really super, super rational in order for you to get that part of your brain back online to help regulate that amygdala. Okay, so if you're really struggling on being stuck on thinking about what's making you anxious, do things that are more logical and rational oriented, and that can help regulate you as well. Okay. And so another tip that's out is practicing the coping skill when you're already calm. Yes, you want to practice coping skills. And the reason you want to do that is because you want to be able to create a muscle memory. You want to be able to create a feeling in your body and a recognition of your brain of this skill makes me feel this way. So if you practice some of your deep breathing or progressive muscle relaxations like at bedtime you're already calm at that point where you're ready for sleep. And what you do is if you're practicing that skill and you're feeling those feelings, when you do need the skill, your brain's like, oh, this skill makes me feel this way. It's going to work more efficiently. It's going to work better for you. So practicing those skills, especially like when you're ready for going to bed, can be really helpful at making them work better when you need them. So how else can you help your friends or yourself? One of these is decreasing what we call vulnerability to emotions. So your likelihood of your emotions getting control of you. So making sure you're physically healthy, because we know that when we're not physically healthy, we're not very happy, we're crabby, we're not in good space. Eating, making sure we're eating things well, making sure the food that you're eating is healthy food and you're drinking enough water. Avoiding mood altering chemicals. This is avoiding the caffeine, the nicotine, drugs or alcohol, those kinds of things. This does not include avoiding prescription medication. Sleep. Sleep is very, very, very important for so many reasons, but especially when it comes to emotion regulation, because we all know that when we are tired and we get crabby really easily. Now you're doing distance learning. There's no reason why you shouldn't be getting your 8 to 10 hours of sleep that's recommended for you for your age. Okay, so get your sleep while you can. It's really important, and if you get the right amount of sleep, it really helps you be able to regulate your emotions in general. And exercise, making sure you're getting out there, getting moving, getting your body engaged in some kind of activity. If you work on those few things and you work on trying to balance those things, it makes it so that you are more able to control your emotions as well. It makes it easier. And then we have something called name it to tame it. When there's something that's unknown in our lives, it makes us really uncomfortable. It's scary. When we don't know something, it's scary. But once we know what it is, all of a sudden it's not as scary anymore. So if you're struggling with having all of these worries, if you've got a lot of these anxiety symptoms, just naming it. This is anxiety right now. This is what I got going on. And once you're able to name it, it makes it so much easier for you to tame it, for you to figure out, okay, I'm dealing with anxiety. Now what am I going to do about it? So at what point should you ask for help? So there's a certain amount of anxiety, like I said, that's normal. It's expected, it's healthy, but anxiety is uncomfortable, okay? Even when it's expected and it's normal, it's still uncomfortable. Now the thing is we're not always going to be comfortable throughout our lives. So we really need to learn how to live our lives while being uncomfortable. We need to learn how to handle our daily anxieties in order to be able to cope with the active world that's going on around us. We're gonna be uncomfortable in our lives. There's no way around it. But what we can do is learn how to manage those uncomfortable and anxious feelings that we have going on. So even when anxiety is normal, yes, it's uncomfortable and we need to learn how to cope with it. Now, if your anxiety is preventing you from doing things that you want or need to do, then maybe you need to start looking at seeking assistance. So if it's preventing you from talking to people, if it's preventing you from being able to actually take that test, if it's preventing you from doing things you want or need to do, then we look at is it more on the clinical side, and maybe we need to get some help. So at that point, you can reach out to parents, teachers, school counselors, or even community agencies, different ones like Family Means, Canvas Health, and YSB, just to name a few, so we can help you be able to deal with some of the anxiety that you're dealing with. And that's all I have for you today. And I hope that you can learn some of these tools and use some of these skills in order to help be able to manage the anxiety you have going on in your lives.